uh, special operator uh, goofball community or whatever is super butthurt again, and they're reeling about uh, Biden sharing a photo of the Delta Force over in Israel because the White House put out a photo that showed some of these troops and their Delta Force guys, but it showed their faces and their tattoos and stuff, you know. And they're super butthurt about how this endangers them and all, you know. Uh, you know, I think that this OPSEC stuff is super overblown for these people, and it's just a prima donna attitude. Like they need to have secret identities or something, like Batman or Spider-Man or Whip-de-Woo. But a troop has no real reason to have you know, a secret identity or you know, they say, well, what if the terrorist you know, what if the terrorist decides to attack these guys? But you know, look at what terrorists actually do, and they don't typically try to find like the biggest badasses to pick fights with. You know, they usually actually target civilians. You know, where they can kill tons of people, and maybe part of that is because they can't. You know, the the people who attack them or whatever, the counter terrorists. You know, you know, they need to be secret so that you know, so that the terrorists will instead fight civilians. You know, good job for defending the civilians or whatever. Um, I've never really seen any evidence, I've put it to people if there's any ever been a case of terrorists, you know, tracking down special forces guys by their photos and trying to find them to kill them or something, or if there was ever an op that they did where you know, a terrorist recognized them from a photo. You know, they could just tell they'd seen this guy because they study all the photos of special forces guys. You know, it's completely unrealistic. It shows kind of the fantasy these people live in, where a special forces troop should be a little more hard nosed and realistic about what they're doing. And this kind of fantasy fluff, prima donna whoop de woo is just hasn't done anything for mission accomplishment. And I'd say actually a good reason why the U.S. keeps on blowing big wars and whatnot in different ways, or they could be done better, is because of these kind of ideas that special operators have. For instance, I read a book by a Delta Force guy, and it was called, but he called himself Dalton Fury, which is his secret code name. And because this is a Delta Force guy who was in Tora Bora, and it was called, the book is called Kill Bin Laden, because that was their bragging that they got this mission, you know, to kill Bin Laden at Tora Bora. And but spoiler alert, they blew it, you know. I mean, and when you read the book, it's almost it was actually pretty infuriating, and that basically every time these guys were exposed to gunfire or something, they were like, nope, and they never even were like using their weapons. They call in airstrikes, but they never even get really in range of small arms fire. This is at the beginning of like the war on terror. The Delta Force was supposed to be the best troops. George W. Bush tells them to kill Bin Laden. They get the most awesome mission, but they act like complete because they're like, well, we're too important, you know, to run into these kind of situations. So if some Al Qaeda guy just blind fires a AK in their direction, they don't go any further. They stay put. We can't, you know, it'd be irresponsible for us to move up. This is a cowardly attitude. It blows my mind because, um, when I was in Iraq, I mean, a Marine, just a Marine squad will, without question, for no almost no reason, will run through machine gun fire. You know, because you close with and destroy the enemy. You know, it's as just you know how you react to contact, and but these guys, they get the mission to kill bin Laden and they don't do it, but they just brag and take all the pictures and they cover up the faces or whatever. And you know, I think that this is really blown so much. Even because these are the people who are responsible for Desert One, where with Iranians take all these hostages, and then Ross Perot gets his people out. But as far as all these State Department embassy people, you get Desert One, where Delta Force just crashes helicopters into each other in the desert and can't go do any more than that. You know, and this is never really revisited. No one ever stops and because the idea is, well, these are super tough missions, but if you really break it down, you see where these guys just screw things up, and a lot of it's a lack of aggressiveness where they like they praise other special operators for like when they're detected or compromised, they just call things off or you know I don't know. It's a totally different attitude, and I know you could say, well, you're a brainless jarhead. You do things your own dumb way. These guys are way better, but I I just don't think so. I myself am a infantry supremacist. What? Infantry supremacist. And this is to me, this is where you win wars. This is where once all that other stuff fades away, you send in the infantry, where you're just troops who are not going to stop, who are going to bring all the weapons to bear on a target, not fruity sneak around and have a Batman type thing, or like actually win a war. Yeah. And it was kind of a mix in the Bush years with the Rumsfeld kind of plans, but by Obama's time, they had no use for infantry at all, and there's failures on the part of infantrymen in that, but it was the overall idea of Obama that this would just everything would be conducted with special forces or whatever. Like with ISIS, we took down say conventional forces took down Saddam within like 3 weeks, like less than a month. And with Obama's special forces plan, it took years and years to take down ISIS, just a terrorist group who'd just taken over. But it took them years for all their high speed stuff, to actually get it done, to actually win. Eventually, you could say, well, eventually they did. They called in enough airstrikes and recruited enough mercenaries to do that. This could have been done by the First Marine Division and say, I don't know, some other army, maybe a couple other army divisions or so, and I'd say like a month or so. Give it a few months. It'd be a tougher battle, no doubt, than Saddam. But either way, you just plow through everything, and then it's done. Not like you say, well, we took, and here's the thing, we took very few casualties in that run up. It could have been done the same way. And and you say, well, we took even less casualties in those years in terms of U.S. troops, but who did die were all the civilians in all the different terror attacks that took place conducted by ISIS, where they had a base of operations in Syria and were just coordinating and all these terror attacks in Europe and the United States and elsewhere for years, while the operators kind of did their thing. uh, I just think that, I think you maybe want to have a supplement of these guys to do certain things, but you just can't rely on them. And I've seen this firsthand myself. Like one of the first place, my second time in Iraq, there's a place called Asadan Market in the Zaidan, and we were told by Navy SEALs, they said they couldn't get in, they couldn't get into this marketplace. It was like a hub for Al Qaeda foreign fighters. It was like a recruitment center of sorts. It was like a place where the foreign fighters could go, and Al Qaeda, the Islamic State of Iraq, could would parse them out here and there, or give them missions, or send them to whatever you know thing. So it was like a gathering of all these terrorists and such. But Navy SEALs couldn't crack it. It had the place had it had like bunkers and stuff made of palm trees and things. It had tunnels, and it had buildings where they just put firing ports in the bricks and everything. And they said they would just hammer at it with and they'd call in fires, and they couldn't really get in. And I mean, so my unit planned out like an op with like 400 Marines. It was like a whole company with however many attachments and stuff. Like it was a hip load of guys. But the morning of it, like my squad was sent to do like a recon kind of by the market. And we just kind of planned that we would amongst ourselves, we said we should purposely try to draw fire from the market. That way we could actually, because we said our squad we felt we could take it. And we had, it was a squad plus. We had 60 millimeter mortars. We had some machine gun guys, and we had snipers with us, and who didn't even bring sniper rifles because just the nature of it. They wanted to get in on the recon of it. But so we did draw fire from there. They opened up on fire when we were on this wadi, and just because just according to our doctrine, the Marine Corps doctrine, we just rushed the market, and it took us about 2.5 hours, and then we were walking up and down the market, and we had taken it, and we'd killed however many guys, and we'd taken not a single casualty, not one of them. And we had to run through quite a few, quite a lot of PKM fire, and however, like just everything. But the Iraqis shoot high. They're not great shots. We rushed the place. By the time we were there, we were about out of ammo, in fairness, and we had to get QRF, and then we bailed. And then the next day, the whole op took the whole thing over and whatever. But it didn't take that much. And then the SEALs would say, we don't really do that. We don't rush through machine gun fire. We sneak, or we take them by surprise, and we sneak about, and then we do kind of this or that. We've seen plenty of that, and I mean that's cool. Like that's cool. Like I do like SEALs in general. I like SEALs more than the Army Special Forces a lot. I'll say that. And I'm not even trying to say that everyone in Special Forces is like a bad guy or something. Like I have respect for everyone really who does their job, and like even like total pogues and stuff. I've total respect for it. Like everyone can find a job that they do, and if they do it, that's awesome. I think that it's just a way overemphasized. And if you're using special forces as your main, this should be a supplementary mission. Instead, I think it's because we just have a pansy population, and they just don't want to do the infantry work. We have a few guys who are still going to do the special force stuff, and whatever. But personally, I think that some of the Army special forces is not as good as the Navy guys. Even though that the Navy SEALs are a bit different. They don't have an infantry background at all. You know, they do totally different stuff. Whereas say Delta Force, they do have an infantry. They're infantry guys. That you know, but as far as they're concerned, I'll say this too. When we would run counterinsurgency stuff, like for instance, um, one squad from my platoon rolled up a whole house full of insurgents, um, and they got all this intel from these guys, and this got relayed, of course, to like JSOC personnel or whatever. And then, but we'd already been working in our area. We had this whole AO, and we would kind of move. What we would do is we would like set up shop, and we would move like every 3 days, and then we would just patrol around an area, and then we would kind of search and destroy, and then we would move again 3 days later. We would take over Iraqis' houses and live out of them. But we like it was like after they rolled up all these guys, we were patrolling also, and we were just asking all these local Iraqis. This was in 2007 when they were very friendly. Like people in Al Anbar, being a Marine was like the coolest thing to them because they hated the Al Qaeda, they hated Islamic State of Iraq so much that they would just you could just ask people where are the terrorists, the Irhabin, the Musalahin, the you know whatever you want, and they'll just point you right at them. And so you just go and you go, and they told us exactly where the very large compound of all these terrorists were, you know. And we were just gonna walk right up to it and just shoot everybody and take the whole thing down. But as soon as we got there, we actually were told over the radio to not. They called us off because you know the Delta Force wanted to do a raid on it or whatever. So then they did like that night, and then it was cool, I guess. But like they went in with helicopters and everything, and I mean they had guys who were like shooting 40 millimeter flashbangs and stuff, and like all this cool stuff. And they had Apaches overhead the whole time, and they just rocket the piss out of everything, and they sent dogs through everything. And I remember they had little tiny glow sticks, and you know, they were much smaller than the normal dumb infantry jarhead glow sticks. They had like the high speed little glow sticks that they could like mark rooms to be clear or whatever. But they just send dogs through everywhere, so they never went into a room without a dog going to it first. So these dogs would just be chewing up all these civilians and women and stuff like that, and people who we later rendered medical aid to, because they don't, you know, they're too cool for any of that. They just bail. It's whatever, but the thing is, like, we could have just done that. We would have done the same thing as been in with far less, you know. Like my squad would have taken that whole thing no problem without even calling an error, because we kind of looked at error as like something that, you know, we wanted to shoot people. We didn't want to just give some pilot every all the action or something. But they just had their I'm sure they see it all or they don't care anymore. But they you know, they have all their air assets. They have all their dogs and all that. And it was cool, but I mean, it was a little bit overkill. So when you know you see like Stanley McChrystal and JSOC and how effective they were, or whatever, they just scoop up all the intel and then decide what they want to do. And I mean, they think it's great. They don't have to do an AO. They brag about this stuff. We don't do presence patrols. Like they're too cool for everything except like raids or something, which isn't even a special operation, a raid. Like, I'm sorry to tell you that that's not a special operation. It's just called a raid. Anyone can do that as a conventional thing. But they just take however many resources, don't want to do any of the grunt work or whatever, you know, like rendering aid to civilians and things like that after your dogs chew them up. You know, I mean, there are women who are badly tore up by these dogs. They don't care. They Yeah, I mean, whatever. Like, okay, you know, we could be just as ruthless, but we'd also have we had more of a stake. It was our AO. You know, we wanted to run the so we you know everyone just started to kind of hate the Delta Force, and people just refer to the Snake Eater bullshit, and so we just didn't care for them, and we would kind of mock them uh the Delta Force bumped into one of our patrols, and our guys were just kind of remarking how like they had like officers as team leaders, but for us like a lance corporal is a team leader, and so we would kind of talk crap, but you just bump into these guys, they have no respect for anyone else. They don't tell you if they're in if they go to your AO sometimes, and so they just leave it on us to not open fire on them. And so their lives are on us that we didn't, they're the ones who are irresponsible. I don't know, like I don't mean to like just totally talk crap. I could talk crap about a lot of different people. I could talk crap about my own unit as well all day, but we just didn't really appreciate, and you look at it like these guys are just taking resources that could have been used elsewhere. They just pool all these resources. We have all the coolest missions, even though it's just stuff anyone could do. Like regular army grunts can believe it or not beat insurgents in firefights and stuff like that without very much problem. Like they're not as good as like Marines or something, but they like actually the army, just regular army infantry, they have guys who can fight. Like they maybe not as many, but like they'll pull it off. Like you don't necessarily need the special force to have all the missions, but at the same time, there's other things to it. Like I said, maybe just people just don't want to do um, this is kind of infantry combat anymore. It's a pansy population, so now maybe you need more smaller units or so. I just don't think it really works that way. You just create kind of chaos, and then you blow all this money on these special troops or whatever that they're not that great. They're not that special. They're cool or whatever. Like in however much they do their job, it's cool. But some of it is like the emphasis is way too much, especially after Obama, and even throughout the Trump years or whatever. It didn't change because Trump had no military ideas at all. He was just do the same thing that Obama had been doing. He didn't shake things up anyway. He had no vision for the military or anything like that. But now I don't know. Maybe because now they let in however many it's more of the woke all that yeah, maybe you and maybe the combination of things, people don't want to they're not trying to enlist. Maybe some of it is because so many infantry vets have turned into total crybabies and all that after they got out. Um, I think that's a problem with the wider culture that just kind of ruined a lot of these people. But either way, like there's no real reason to try to get butthurt on the commander in chief because he shows a picture of you. That's called the commander in chief. If he doesn't think your identity is a secret, then it's not. If you don't want your tattoos on your arms all over to be shown, maybe you shouldn't have got tattoos. Or it doesn't seem like they even take this stuff that seriously. They get like sleeve tattoos. They're like obviously identifying, and then they like whine about their secret identity. And then they'll come out and like the guy who says that the SEAL who says he shot Bin Laden, he like has to live in a compound or something. He has to live in a compound in case some Muslim wants to get revenge or something. No one's even coming. Like no one cares. I've never like there isn't like some Muslim hit squad trying to get into this guy's compound so he could say that he shot the guy who shot Bin Laden. I don't even think that's the mentality of of Muslims. They don't even think like that. That's not even their MO at all, which you'd think that the counterterror experts would kind of pick up on. It's just it matters more to them to have this kind of um thing like this gives them like gravitas or something. It hasn't been effective. Like the I don't know, the way that they're conducting with the Middle Eastern wars and stuff. And then you see how Russia, they tried to kind of emulate the direction the US was going with some of the stuff at first, where they went in with like the shoestring invasion. They did that because that's what kind of Rumsfeld came up with with his ideas that you would which are but some of those are actually good. Like I think the ideas of like um equipping the infantry more like with all the drones and the airstrikes and things like that, and some of these are good. Others I think are kind of ruining the infantry. The Marine Corps getting rid of tanks, for instance, I think is very dumb. I think that was a dumb idea. But I guess they want to special force-ize the Marine Corps infantry or something. They the infantry should just like to me, and this is maybe where I'm brainwashed, but I always thought of actually the riflemen as like just the tip of the spear of like the whole military. To me, everyone else serves the infantry riflemen. That might be my bias. That's what that was told to me, and that was kind of pounded into our head that the rest of the Marine Corps serves you. That everyone else is your support. If you're it's for the infantry. That like every pogue, every special operator, every airplane is to get your boots on the ground in the right place. So you occupy, to me that's what victory means, is when you have infantry overrunning these objectives and taking over the enemy stuff. Like people who know how to occupy stuff, who don't just sneak, who are not afraid to show their face. Because I mean, I think that anyone who's in the military and especially on the battlefield is like a public figure in a way, because you're engaging in politics on that level. Like you shouldn't be a secret identity if you hold, you are someone who goes to foreign countries and like people's lives are in your hands in a way. um, there should be some accountability there. Instead, and it's conservatives who cry the most. In fairness, it's the special forces people and like these kind of conservative people who will just get butthurt beyond belief. You can't show these men's faces, and there's it's like they don't get that this is how a deep state would form, where you have a certain amount of people who are showing their identities and all that. Like that's why I'd say there could be some benefit to having like a secret identity and to this kind of OPSEC, but it's not worth it when if you don't want if you want a society where everything's open and honest and on the table, it's on the surface, or you can have some dumb deep state like which is like a real thing in a way, that there's however many people who have security clearance, there's however many people who are like secret. I don't think that's correct. That's like a secret society of sorts. And these people are really no good. Like I bump into them online because there's however many of these special forces guys, and some of these guys are cool, but some are total bozos, and they'll interact online and they act like children. Where like they'll call them like online they'll call themselves the goon community because their goons are they're goon and the goon community, there's that's the same name that people who look at pornography on the internet call themselves, who are goons, or whatever, the goon community. And they'll just come up with the dumbest stuff about they'll like nitpick gear or stuff like that. I've had them like I've had grown men active duty special forces operators who like will like look at like who the if you make fun of them they get super butthurt and like stalk you. And then but the guys will like look at my photos and stuff and like they'll try to make fun of me for like placement of tattoos and like having a buttstock magazine and stuff like that. Even though like I hate to tell you like I think a buttstock magazine is kind of dumb, but it's just something that like in those Iraq war years were actually pretty common if you look, and there's reason for it because if you know anything about the Iraq war or whatever. But they don't get like that was kind of a time where we were experimenting with all the gear and stuff. Like now they have you see all the gear and it's not any much more advanced than we had in say 2004, 2005, 2006, 7. Those were the years where we were first getting all the stuff was coming in, this new stuff, and you had all the Molly stuff, and everyone could put whatever they want and kind of customize their stuff. And you're not now that they've refined that. That's awesome. Like that's great. But like they'll act like they have all these like stupid rules or something that they act like is like I don't follow their stupid crap now. Like I don't care about what they think is like the proper placement of the and their dumb Molly crap. A lot of the Marines had like my gear actually I thought was pretty tight, but like there were dudes who looked pretty sloppy back in the day, and they actually got along just fine as troops, and it was what worked for them. And even though people did things that I thought was kind of stupid with their gear, but it worked for them, and it was just the idea at the time was, you know, are you gonna be like the biggest gear crew, or you police everybody else's stuff to make sure it's the most tactical way to? That's how these people are. No, the goon community, wankers, is what is really what we're dealing with. So I don't think that these are people who could win a war. I think these are people who will glorify themselves as the operator, whoop-de-woos. I don't like. I'm not like. There's a place for them, and I'll like. Let me say too. Like I think that the MARSOC guys, the Marines, which is just recruited from Marine infantry guys. I think they're gonna eat. I think they've already been eating these people's lunch, and they get kind of butthurt about it. Once Marines got in the game, forget it, Army. Like you're not. I don't know. I don't really want to go there. Like I like the Army. I'm not, but I think that there's this goon community. I don't care for that. I don't like troops who wear baseball caps and stuff and like sneakers. Some people would like think that was all cool. Wow, those guys wear sneakers and they wear baseball caps. I always thought that was kind of lame and dumb. Like I like being like more military and just more of a troop. There's more of the Marine style. I personally think that once you get Marines and Special Forces, it's game over for kind of everyone else. I think probably we're already probably to the point where MARSOC needs to like make room and not overly glorify themselves too much, which I'm sure they'll do because Marines are humble and Marines are team players. Unlike goon community operator whoop-de-whoop, whatever. I know not all those people are like that. I've talked to people who are like Army Special Forces and are embarrassed by people like that. And I've talked to like I don't even mean to rip on like the Delta Force, even though I will. Like I think I've met like super cool dudes from the Delta Force who like I really liked, and I it's they're clearly like great, like they're clearly like super soldiers. Some of these guys, yeah, I think they're awesome just as individuals. It's just that there's a certain when it becomes like a prevailing mindset and it becomes like this overall thing. Like even why should so many people get butthurt that some Delta Force guy's picture gets shown. That happens all the time. You see these people's pictures. Not a big deal. No one even rushed out to spread these guys' pictures around, which you could have easily done or whatever. Then they black out their face or something. Well, once you already released the photo, I'm sure wouldn't have terrorists already saved those JPEGs or whatever? They already know who these guys are. They'd already be entered in the database. It's already been on the internet. What's the point anymore? You're already compromised. But you can't get in the way of their play acting. Like, I'll say I do think some of the ideas of making the looser, lighter military are good. You go too far when the first Marine Division doesn't have tanks anymore. That's pretty stupid. Like, and one of the things I liked about I liked I like being in the infantry because I like going in heavy. I like going in with, I mean, as far as the counterinsurgency, I didn't always like when tanks would show up because it would kind of mean that no one was going to shoot at you. You weren't going to get any action because no one's dumb enough to shoot at the Abrams. Like, it just meant that any insurgent would run away, and we preferred when we lured them in to fight us. We liked it when they would ambush us. But I like it anyway, like the idea of just going in heavy. I like armored vehicles and stuff. I'd like it if the enemy just presented a bigger target. Like, I would have loved to hit up enemy tanks and stuff like that. And that stuff's awesome. That was like a dream. But it's like why I didn't have so much. I'd kind of thought like doing scout snipers would be cool or something because they were a little more OFP. So it was like, man, when you're sick, a lot of guys would go snipers because they're sick of their lieutenant or something, their stupid like butter bar, or the command in the companies. Like, I felt that, like, but in the end, I wasn't that interested, just because you'd just rather go in, just guns blazing with that. Like, I like the squads where you had at least 3 machine guns going out. We'd roll out with the mortar tubes, and you'd go out with just everything, and then you're just gonna hit them up, and you're not gonna say, well, it cost $1 million to train me. I can't get shot by some dirt poor Iraqi or something. We didn't care, and that's a better attitude. What's the point in training some guy up to where and then they're gonna be like, well, I'm too important. My training, I can't get exposed to danger because I've hit. It makes no sense. You should, if you've had so much training, the danger, you should be somewhat more impervious to it. You should say, well, I have this training. It's better that I go out because you can't put a price on human life. But you'll hear this from special forces people. Well, you can't just risk the lives of these. They're not so expendable. They have all this training. They have the training that costs all the money or something. What sense does that make? That should be your first. I'm not saying just throw these guys into any dumb situation with, callous disregard for their lives, but the idea that they're too important for a job that some like a regular army infantry guy, they'd be too important to do it. That guy does. Like, that's I think offensive and kind of just rotten. Like, it's like he's get out of here. And then these guys will just, however many will just go into these stupid PMC dumb like Blackwater and stuff like that, where they just where they don't really do anything. Mind you, Blackwater, it doesn't do any really cool stuff. That's why Blackwater would also shoot at civilians, and it's because they're bored and they're goons who they wouldn't really get a lot of action depending on their mission, or if they do, they just get chopped up like the guys in Fallujah who created an international incident with their arrogance. They they don't really, they're not like the Wagner group or something where they're like this mercenary infantry thing. So I mean, how many of these guys get trained up and then they just get poached by these stupid BMC groups, and then they make all this money doing all this stuff? The whole thing's like the biggest swindle ever. Like the American taxpayer is not getting their money's worth for these guys. Wars aren't being won. Things are being completely blown. Like the whole Afghan thing and all that. That was largely a big special ops driven war, and we see how far that got. Because you don't have so much respect for the special operator troop, the snake eater guys or something. To them, they think of them probably just like terrorists. To them, it's no different than it's just the American terrorists. The same thing. They won't show their faces. That's what Americans would always say about terrorists. These guys are cowards, or like Antifa or something. They're cowards because they don't show their face. I mean, that's that's a little bit overblown, but you would apply the same. Wouldn't you apply the same logic to the operator, the special operator? Of course you would. Why don't they show their face? Why don't they? There's no reason really not to. I don't see why. I don't see why they couldn't just brief people about all this stuff. Everything they do, like the Bin Laden raid, it was all done in the dark. They don't even show the picture of Bin Laden. Yeah, that's very dumb. Like, I mean, I figure Marines would have just chopped his head off. Marines would have just chopped Bin Laden's head off and put it in their bag, and they'd be showing everybody. And you'd know the exact guys who did it, because they of course would brag about it. This is but this is a lot healthier, and it'd be healthier for America as well. Um, Not to say that these guys don't do stuff. Yeah, Delta Force took down Baghdadi. They did that raid, and they did all this other stuff. But like I said, it took however long with no real ground component, infantry component being done in that war. It just took forever, and it only really led to all these terrorist attacks. A big part of Iraq, the thing is, with if you have the infantry, it did put a target on us, but it also meant that like international terrorism was less of a thing during the global war on terror. Because if you're a mujahideen or something, you don't need to go kill civilians in Europe. You should be fighting, you know, just all the infantry troops that America's put into Iraq. And so after a while, Al Qaeda started telling their people to stop showing. There was an Al Qaeda scholar named Makdisi who started telling their people to stop going to Iraq because it was such an inferno for the international Salafist jihadist movement. So many of these people who would have been otherwise international terrorists went to Iraq and were killed in the streets in just open and honest fighting with the U.S. Army and U.S. Marines. You know, and then that's the bulk of the work. That's how it was done. And then, but yeah, I mean, not to say that special forces didn't weren't involved. They did some great stuff too, for sure. But without that component, without the infantry component, things don't work as well, do they? Like if you just go totally on the shoelace and you just have superhero special forces guys or something that just call in airstrikes and everything, it doesn't really work as well. It didn't. Instead, that actually inspired, because they'd say to actually find an American to fight, because these guys won't close with the enemy. They don't, so to find an American or a Westerner to fight to get revenge on, you actually have to travel to Europe or America and kill civilians, because these guys are are doing whatever. So I don't think that kind of way of warfare defended anything, protected anything. It didn't lead to any long lasting peace or anything. I mean, in terms of it could, I guess, if you just go completely ruthless and just, but they don't even really have it in them to do that. They're super ruthless when their lives are at stake. They'll call in airstrikes and everything. They'll have dogs eat everybody. But beyond that, they'll be like, maybe not so much. There's some of the biggest crybabies too about like, they cry over like Russian soldiers and stuff, and like how people are like inhumane, and you see a lot of dumb stuff from the goon community, which are grown men who act like complete babies on the internet, even though they're like active duty special forces operators or whatever. So some of these people, no respect for just because of their own behavior, but in general, you know, yeah, it's like any troop should be respected, but the whole thing hasn't been that good. We need a more martial attitude. It probably can't happen now just because of the way the American culture is, but we should be working on building towards a more martial society. You know, because what do we do now if you actually have to take down like some of it, the ideas of combat, now that everyone's freaking out about like a draft or something. Oh no, I hope I don't get drafted. Like they're gonna put me in the Zoomer Brigade, and I'm gonna have to fight all these Arab nations or something. Like, okay, first off, Arab nations are they've kind of learned their lesson for the most part. Maybe I'll eat my words and they start attacking or something. But do you see any of them like having any offensive capability or something? Like there's gonna be like some like Egyptian tank division or something that takes on the U.S. head on, and you're gonna be in like firefights with all these conventional battles or something. It's more likely U.S. air power just wipes out everything, and so forth. Even in the infantry, and this was the same thing in Desert Storm. Guys were competing with air, to actually get some kills with their own. Or whatever. 'Cause however much of the battle takes place with the air power is just incinerating everybody. But you absolutely still need this ground component. It's still very important. The fact that it's not really there is bad for America. I think this is a lot of the difference between why Iraq was won and Afghanistan was lost. Um, just because Afghanistan, the idea was just to go so much lighter, and by the end of it, they did like a full on like Afghanization. So by the time we left, there wasn't much there. But once you once you pulled out what that was, which is maybe some operator component and then just people to assist and call in airstrikes and stuff. It actually worked out to be absolutely about nothing. You could have actually maybe kept that going for forever, but maybe not. My the point is anyhow, this whole the special operations thing hasn't been that great. People have weird ideas about it, but the restructuring of the military should probably be based in beefing up and empowering the infantrymen, in my opinion, over there's still absolutely a place for like special forces and things, but like if you look at like say like Otto Skorzeny, the German special operator in World War II, most of his guys he would just pull from like the German like grunt units from like the SS and thing, and it wasn't or like paratroopers. You would just pull infantry guys or pull people from for these like missions, and it went fine. You know, and there were all, and then comparatively, the the more dedicated operator guy you didn't hear that much about in that big war. I don't know that could be getting into its whole other thing, but I don't know. The nature of combat is definitely going to change. Maybe circumstances will force something to happen. We'll see. As it is, we just don't have that kind of component. It doesn't seem like we don't have that many real hitters, or they're not employed so much. Maybe they're worried about the veterans' benefits if they send in like a full scale thing. But the whole idea of like the operator driven wars, it's not going anywhere. It's really a series of failures and stuff from I mean from Desert One to Mogadishu to Tora Bora to whatever. And some every now and then there's some mission accomplishment, but more or less, it's just big disasters, and kind of a community is just based on glorifying their own ethos or whatever. Um, but yeah, you could disagree. I'm sure there's tons of people, most people probably disagree with me, but I happen to just like the more conventional, traditional warfare with the more conventional component, where you go in and you go in you just go in hard, not sneak about and do all this stuff. Anyhow, that should about do it. I know this has been a bit of a rant. It's a fun rant. It, I just thought I'd come up with it because the stuff with the like with the idea of like the president shows like a picture of guys in the Delta Force, and they're all butthurt because their picture revealed their Spider-Man identities. It's just so stupid. Like the whole mentality is like it's kind of like a cancer. Like we don't need that. These aren't CIA agents. Maybe they want to be or something, but they're not. You know, like everyone isn't up until they are. So what's the point in making a big deal? There's no evidence whatsoever that terrorists even give a hoot about who these guys are or anything like that. I've asked people, I asked people can you think of any times where this has happened, or no? Well, it seems like they're just making stuff up, or that the counter-terror people don't understand the actual terror MO, but they just figure mm, they don't want to be exposed to danger. They'd rather terrorists just target civilians. Makes no sense. Anyhow, all right, but have a good one.